What's up, everyone? Welcome to ClearTalk. So, as you can see, we are not at the fire pit. We are right here on my front porch. Um, and because it is a dreary day today, there's a fine mist falling pretty heavily at the moment. So, the fire pit was not ideal. But that's fine. We're going to continue on because we have things to talk about. Because I am seeing. We've seen there's videos out there from the G7 summit with Trump saying some very interesting things, and I wanted to discuss it in this video because I'm seeing, as we talked yesterday about the argument of whether or not there would be a split, because that the United States and Israel were ultimately like this sort of under the radar kind of thing, ultimately trying to separate Iran from Hezbollah, right? But then there was this underlying thing from Iran that they were trying to ultimately separate the U.S. from Israel. And I submitted the question, like, who do you think is more likely in this whole, everything going down, to actually have cracks happen? Maybe not a complete split, but at least have significant cracks happen, right? And I proposed that I felt that there was a more likelihood of U.S. and Israel having cracks because of the not even necessarily from the U.S. leadership and government and the regime or whatever, and all the powers that be within Washington, but even pressure. I would felt like it would be more pressure from the people, from the growing frustration with what Israel keeps pulling the U.S. into because of our ties. But and now we have statements from Trump at the G7 that make me. I think we need to analyze a little bit. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about here, and maybe the psyche of Trump a little bit. I don't know. I might dive into that a little bit, but what ultimately is going on here in this memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding, this week that we have before the official signing, even though there has been a digital signing yesterday. We know that was more. Again, there's supposed to be a physical signing that is supposed to happen Friday, and I think that's because, again, there's this expectation probably from both sides. Okay, there's this, let's give it a week. We have things that we need to be done as far as the Strait of Hormuz, getting mines out, getting ships moving, all the logistics of that, along with both sides showing that they are being legitimate to the agreement and trying to start the steps for all these things that they want to get into place before officially signing, kind of like a verification process, let's just say. And both sides are trying to do this. Let's just, or at least trying to state that they're doing this, it seems. But here at the G7, though, we had Trump make some statements today. For one, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I feel like Trump has the tendency, he has the tendency of a broken clock. Okay, the idea that a broken clock is right at least twice a day, right? I feel that he has tendencies to be like a broken clock. He has tendencies to be right, at least, every now and then, even though everything else he gets is wrong, or his other opinions of things are wrong. Although maybe they're wrong because of bad information, or just bad interpretations, or ignorance, I don't know. But nevertheless, okay, he was at the G7, and when asked and talking about the whole memorandum of understanding and about the impact of Israel and what's going on in Lebanon, and whether or not they would Was there a concern about what was going on and whether Israel was going to ultimately adhere to this agreement. And he made some interesting statements. For one, he was going on about, crazy enough, the leader of Syria, right? The new, former Al Qaeda leader that we helped get in place there in Syria. And he goes on this rant about how he did not like the strikes that happened in Beirut before the agreement. And, that he was very unhappy with that and that shouldn't happen. And talking about how, that Bibi claims of bombing, they're bombing apartments, claiming that this Hezbollah, but he from Trump himself, he's like, but of course there's just regular people in these apartments. They're not all Hezbollah, so you have to be. He was basically saying he said that Bibi needed to have more responsibility in actions in Lebanon, and he was purporting that he told Bibi that maybe Israel did not need to be the ones handling Hezbollah, that and it was coming more and more clear that they didn't need to be the ones handling Hezbollah, and that he was suggesting that Syria handle Hezbollah because that leader seemed to be better poised to do so than Bibi and Israel, because Israel, it's clearly they have some personal intent to make it light, and fuck that. They are genocidal, they are erratic, they are chaotic, they have and imperialist in a way that they want to do nothing but take land and destroy people, and that is becoming more and more of a bad apple for Trump. Because Trump and his psyche, it's becoming more clear. Even though I've always thought this, but it's becoming more and more evident that Trump really, he has this psyche when it comes to like leadership. He wants to be the boss man, right? He wants to be like a mob boss, like a king, he wants, and he respects other leaders that are like that, but have restraint, right? That can show, or at least have the image of being powerful without not necessarily having to be powerful. Like literally, he just at least wants the image of strength, the image of a winner. And so and that's like his balance between being a warmonger and being what he considers a peaceful guy, or bringing peace, making deals. Like, he doesn't have a problem with being fierce, or showing fierce, using a military to show strength when he's sold that it's needed. Because as long as it's sold to him that he is looking strong in doing so. But he also sees strength in making deals, okay? Because he is completely, branded himself in being the deal maker. And that is him winning, is making deals. Whether or not the deals are good for, more or less good for him than anybody else, but that makes him a winner. In his mind, that makes him a winner. So in this Iran-U.S. deal, he's trying everything he can to make it look like he has won here, even though it's pretty clear that we are not winning in this. And this is going to be, even though he argues all the time that the JCPOA was a horrible deal, and was a road to a nuclear bomb. We know that to not be true. But he states that, his deal is a wall to a nuclear bomb, a wall for a nuclear bomb. Um, which I find funny because nuclear bombs can blow up walls too. Like, so, matter of fact, bomb would be more for a wall than a road, but whatever. I don't really understand that argument, but or that, framing too much, but and with the deal on the line and him able to spin his continued argument of being the peacemaker, and solving all these wars that we also know he hasn't really solved, but nonetheless, in his mind, in his ego, in his narcissism, that's what he thinks is happening, or that's what he thinks is going to make him look better in this moment, because he knows that the continued bombing is looking disastrous. There's a lot of pushback, okay, for the bombing. But making a deal makes him a peacemaker, so he knows he has that support, whether like valid or not, that he is a peacemaker. And Bibi in Israel doing these actions is blowing up that opportunity for him to look like he's winning. So he has, and so he is openly at this point basically dogging Bibi and Israel as being too hostile. I mean, and what I find interesting is that he's coming to this conclusion over Lebanon, that apartment buildings are not all Hezbollah, that they also have regular people in them. He's coming to that conclusion for Lebanon when he's in the middle of making a deal, but yet he didn't have a problem with that when it comes to Gaza and Hamas and them carpet bombing Gaza like crazy. Like, that didn't click there, I find that interesting. But nonetheless, so he is arguing that a former Al-Qaeda leader that is now in charge of Syria has a better possibility of handling Hezbollah than Bibi and Israel. I shit you not. Probably more likely because if he tells the former Al-Qaeda leader to not do anything, he's going to listen, because clearly it would not be in the best interest of Syria to do that. That would be insane for Syria to do that. And that's a whole nother discussion. But it's becoming openly clear to even Trump that Bibi and Israel are rogue and hostile and are going to blow up an opportunity for him to look like he won. And that's a problem for him. So there are cracks. All this is to say, there are cracks happening. Again, I'm not saying that this is going to bring about a condition in policy and an overall stance between the U.S. and Israel that is fractured to the point that we won't support them or something. But there's at least a personal crack happening between this quote-unquote brotherhood and great, amazing relationship between Trump and Netanyahu, at the very least. To where he is seeing, and again, whenever something is not looking good for Trump, we know he has a history of cutting people off. He has done it over and over and over and over again. So maybe even a personal crack between Trump and Netanyahu would be enough for Trump to decisively cut off Bibi, because Bibi is creating a bad image for him. That he would cut off Bibi enough just to try to make himself look good. And at this point, Trump is desperate for a win, because clearly this has been a disaster from the start that Bibi helped him get into. Bibi pressured him into. And this has become a disaster. A PR and image disaster for Trump. So yes, the cracks are there. The cracks have formed. The cracks are being openly expressed at this point. Even though Trump and his argument all around Iran and the nuclear enrichment and what his perceptions of this deal are going to like overall, what's overall going to happen after this is probably all completely wrong. I'm pretty sure it's all wrong. But at least in this, by just the simplicity of Trump looking bad, he is a broken clock right now. He is right in saying openly that Bibi and Israel and how they are conducting themselves in Lebanon is wrong, is bad. Again, I don't think he has an ideology around like that, it is humanely bad, that innocent people are dying kind of bad. It's more on just his own personal image that is bad, that it's bad for him. But either way, this could be beneficial. This could be beneficial for the deal. This could be beneficial going forward with the U.S. and Israel relations and trying to make sure that all this push for Israel and U.S. to be more and more connected and webbed in our military and our intelligence and all this it could be enough to prevent that faction of the Trump regime that has been pushing Trump so hard towards Israel and bonding himself to Israel, that faction could be put on the back burner, at least could be put to the side as far as Trump is concerned. That's the one, I guess, thing I can say about the narcissism of Trump that benefits, coincidentally sometimes they line up again, the dead clock effect that lines up in the weirdest fucking way. Again, not morality, not ideologically, but just like in the stupidest way, the most simplistic of ways, lines up to benefit all of us. Now, again, something could happen, and Trump, he has been mentally chaotic here lately. So, who knows? Tomorrow he could turn around and completely flip a switch and be all buddy-buddy again with Bibi and ultimately continue to let Israel do what they're doing. Because, I mean, even today, there's continuation of Israel on Tuesday continuing to do military actions within Lebanon, trying to take a specific hill in southern Lebanon that's strategically, for them, high ground. And there has been massive pushback by Hezbollah to prevent that from happening. Israel themselves, the IDF themselves, have stated that just within the past few days, like 30 Israeli military soldiers have died and thousands wounded just within the past few days. So they are taking massive casualties from this. The continuation of trying to occupy and create their, security parameter, their security domain, aka occupy territory in Lebanon, and they will not remove themselves, even though it's become more and more increasingly clear that that was more than likely a part of this memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding, that it could be interpreted. The wording is weird in a way that it appears to be trying to state that Israel needs to be removed, but Israel is kind of vague in a way that Israel can interpret it or try to argue and spin it to where, no, actually it's not really saying that we have to be removed, we just need to end hostilities. But they're not even doing that. So either way, even in their own argument, they're still not adhering to the MOU. So again, this week is going to be, I think, very revealing. It's going to be very revealing on how much more cracks, how much more divide could potentially happen if Israel continues its actions and continues to defy Trump's wishes. If Bibi continues to defy Trump's wishes in getting this deal done, how far would Trump be willing to go? I feel like he's hitting this crossroad where he's got to decide whether it's more important to make himself look good in doing this deal, or at least to him look good by doing this deal, and whatever way he wants to spin it as it being better than Obama's, because that's becoming increasingly clear that is not. But nevertheless, for him to spin it however he wants to make himself look better, to get this deal done, is that more important than this brotherly relationship with Bibi and Israel, and letting them, and all this money that the Israeli lobby has thrown his way to make sure that they were able to do all of this? Annex, bomb, kill, destroy, whatever, like all of this aspirations that the Zionist movement has for all of this area, from Gaza to Lebanon to Syria to the West Bank. Which Netanyahu just stated yesterday that they were not going to remove themselves from. They have all intentions to remain in all of those territories. Sorry, my dogs just came hustling up here, and I was concerned, very much concerned. Okay, all right, go on. Sorry. What's going to be more important? What is going to be more important to Trump? And are those fractures going to widen and deepen? And what will that cause? Which again would bring up an even deeper concern for if the U.S., a thought process here, if the U.S. were to actually break a little bit from Israel and leave them to their own devices, which we've talked about, we could start to see a side of Israel potentially that go two ways. Either Israel buckles and realizes that they do not have skin in this game like they think they do, or like they try to project that they do, that they are quite literally the paper tiger that they are, and without the U.S. they would be nobody? Or are they going to lose their shit and actually show their true colors and completely go off the deep end? And if so, how is the rest of the world going to respond? That's going to be something to watch. Not only for this remainder of this week, but for like the next 60-day period. If we go ahead and go through with the signing on Friday, the next 60-day period of negotiations and framework building around all the other issues to try to come to an ultimate agreement. And if that gets signed going further, like the next few months, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. So, thank you very much for joining me. Could this work in our favor? Could this narcissistic, like, boss man, winning, obsessed president that we have decide to favor himself over a lobby, a nation that has basically helped support get him where he is, and their demands of him? Who's going to win? Trump's ego or the Zionist lobby of Israel? That's the question. Let me know what you think. And until next time, peace. Clear Talk, I'm out.